Okay, so I have it up. So again, I'll have it up for you guys to see later on. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be looking at lesson 3. And this week, as I mentioned, we are just going to focus on the part of customer service that has to do with communication. So that's going to be the main focus of this week. So what is good communication? What is not good communication? So I will share my screen with you guys as I normally do. And here we go. All right. So today's agenda, as always, right? Remember, we're always going to have our agendas. We're going to go over lesson 3. We'll take our first break. We'll continue on with our lesson. We'll do our activity. We'll take our second break, continue on the lesson, do another activity, and then at the end, we'll have the Q&A session. And then don't forget that our session 1 and 2 is on Canvas. And we don't have any to-dos for this week. There's nothing that you guys have to do. Remember, I don't give out homework, but there's nothing that you have to fill out or anything like that, okay? So that is our agenda for today. And we may not go, we may not do like every moment detailed this way, but that's the general breakdown for today, okay? Okay. And as always, I start my lesson with a summary of what we looked at during the previous class. So remember, right, we have 2 types of customers. One is your external customer, and that's the people that are seeking services and products from you. So that would be the person that walks in through that, that restaurant door and is asking to, purchase a meal. Or the person who walks in to get a haircut, right? They're purchasing a service. Those are your external customers. But remember, you always have your internal customers. And those are the people who you work with every single day. Your coworkers, your manager, the people in human resources, if you work in a factory, right? It could be the people in the loading docks. If you work in a grocery store, that's the people who stock the shelves, the people who are in the bakery and the meat department, etc. Right? These are all basically everybody in your work environment, and they are just as important. Those relationships that you have with them are just as important as the customers that you serve, right? Remember that the relationship that you have with your internal customers is a relationship that is symbiotic, meaning that both of you are benefiting from one another. If, for example, I need to sell goods, like baked goods, right? Like I have a bakery, but and I work the front counter. I'm the one that is serving the customers. When they come in, they purchase and I give them their pies, their cookies, their cakes, all of that. If I don't have someone who is actually making these cakes, right, then I can't serve my customers because I can't bake the cakes. And then we're going to lose customers, right? Because we don't have a product to give them. So we depend on one another as internal customers. And that's why it's important to have a good communication system with the people that we work with, right? We want to have those positive work environments because that's going to lead to better productivity. So it's also important for those of you who might be in management, right? It's important for your workers to perform well. You need to have, remember Roomba? It means that your goals or the instructions that you're providing to your workers are realistic, they're understandable, they're measurable, they're believable, and they're attainable, right? So realistic, it's going to be something that they can do. You need to be able to give them detailed instructions, right? You can't just assume that they're going to know what you want them to do if you've never given them the proper tools for that. They need to be measurable, meaning we need to know how we can actually measure their success or their performance. And it has to be believable, right? I can have, like for example, if I work at a salon, I can't have my front staff who does all the booking of appointments and the greeting. I can't have them be the ones that are cutting hair because they don't have the training for that, right? And it has to be attainable, meaning that I have given my workers the resources to be able to provide the goods and services, right? I can't expect my restaurant staff to serve a burger if I haven't provided them with like any products to be able to make that burger. So when we remember that when we create a working environment based on respect, we are able to perform better. So our workers perform better when we know that, when they know they're being respected and they're being valued. Okay. And now I want to start off with an ethical dilemma that we might face at one point at work, right? We always have these possible ethical dilemmas that might come up, and your book really talks a lot about these. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? I just want you to kind of start thinking about this because this is in relationship to those internal workers. Having a good relationship with your internal workers, or customers, I should say, is very important. And so we're going to do this like play scenario. Think about it, right? So should you inform your supervisor of what you know to ensure that she makes an educated choice based on the qualifications, why or why not? So we're going to get in the mindset, right? It's an ethical dilemma. This is just a scenario that could possibly happen. Let's say that you know there's a position that is opening up. It's a higher position, and you know that you and another coworker are both qualified to take this position, right? But you also know that the other employee who is going to apply for this position, you know that their performance is not the best. And the performance at this point is actual or lack of is affecting you, other employees, the organization as itself, and the customers. And you feel like you should actually approach your supervisor in a confidential manner, meaning in a private manner, right? To inform her of what is going on. The downside of taking this action is that your supervisor might question your timing and motives for doing so, especially since there are 3 people involved and you have to come forward. You did not come forward earlier. So we're going to assume that you are, there was a situation that arose and you know that the person who is a candidate for that promotion was doing something they weren't supposed to do, and it's affecting the performance, their performance, and everybody, like the rest of the work environment. So based on what you know, do you feel that it is a good time now to bring it up to your supervisor? Or do you feel that you're just gonna ride this one out, just let it be, you're not gonna say anything, right? You're just gonna, just gonna keep your mouth shut? Or do you think it's okay for you to speak up and tell your supervisor of what is happening? Okay. And I want you to think about, what could be the potential results of any action that you take on this issue? There's always going to be a consequence, right? So think about what you would do. And I'm going to give you about a minute to decide whether or not you would actually come forward and tell your supervisor about what's happening, or if you're just going to write it out and be like, never mind, I'm just going to keep it to myself. Okay, so I will start a poll and you can let me know what you think, okay? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. All right. Let me see if I can pull up the poll. So think about it, right? Think about whether or not you would do that. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I will go ahead and launch that question. Okay. All right, so it looks like we have all of our answers. I will end the poll and I will share the results with you guys. So it looks like 6 of you would actually tell your supervisor about the unethical behavior that is going on. And 3 of you are just going to keep it to yourself. You're not going to say anything. You're just going to write it out and let it be. And again, there is no wrong answer, right? But sometimes these things happen in the workplace. And I want you to remember that it's important that we think about those internal relationships with our internal customers, right? Just remember that there's always going to be consequences, whether it's positive or negative, right? In the positives in this case, if we do say something, is that our supervisor will know, and maybe she can go ahead and address those issues with that employee, right? Because we know that the employee's behavior is now affecting other employees, and it's also affecting our customers. And the number one goal of our is to service our customers, right? So we want to make sure that they are being helped. So if we know that the employee's behavior is wrong, we want to correct it. So the positive, like, they can correct their behavior, and they will give better serve our customers. The negative side would be, right, that perhaps by us sharing something, that internal customer who is your coworker might take offense, right? What if they, even though it was confidential, they might know that it was you that shared that information, and it might lead to the other actions, right? That person might get mad at you, they might gossip, things of that sort. So there's always a pro and con type of thing that happens along the way. But you could also just not say anything, and it could have negative impact because we're going to start losing customers. Maybe productivity is going to be low. Or in the positive side, if you don't say anything, maybe the issue just kind of works itself out. That particular employee decides to just, maybe they miraculously change their behavior, right? So there's always multiple scenarios that could happen. But I also want you to get into the habit of creating a visual tool to help you decide. And it's really cheesy, but just having a pro and con list, right? It really does help to make this, it really does help when it comes to making decisions at work. So in this particular in this particular case, right, you can make a list. What would be the good thing about sharing what is happening? What would be the bad thing about sharing what is happening? And sometimes just being able to visualize the good and the bad of a situation helps us to make that decision, right? It helps us to make an informed decision. And this can be with anything, right? It doesn't even have to be related to work. Just thinking about making that list. Remember when I shared with you guys on the first day of class that having to actually take notes on a piece of paper with a pen and everything actually helps you to kind of, learn the information more, because you're visually looking at the information that you're writing down, and that's helping your brain to process the information better and to retain it better. And it's the same thing when it comes to making a list. It really does help. And again, it can be with any sort of situation that you might find yourself in. Making an actual list to visualize it really does help. I had a client who was thinking about a promotion. It wasn't a higher up promotion. It was a lateral promotion. So he would stay in the same position, but he would just change teams. And he was really conflicted. He didn't know if he should or he shouldn't. And we had an actual talk about what was the pro and the cons, and he still couldn't decide. So I suggested, why don't you make an actual list? And then we spoke a few days later, and he said, I declined the new position because I did the pro and con list, and I realized that I wasn't going to be motivated. I was not going to have enough motivation to be able to perform well in that position. And we'll actually talk about motivation today as well. I do have a few questions on the chat. One of them was, what will you do in this situation? Honestly, I think I would address it with my, and that's just my personal opinion, right? I would address it with my supervisor. I would probably write out what I was going to say, and let them know that I would like to keep the information confidential, and tell them, what happened. I would try to have like an action, maybe like a report type of thing, where I would say, this is what happened, and this is how it affected, which is very important, right? I would say it affected the customers in this way, and then it also affected our co-workers in this way. But I would also have to brace myself for whatever possible retaliations that could come across from this particular talk that I would have with my supervisor, knowing very well that it could go well or it could go really bad. So I would personally share it if I knew that it was something that was really, really affecting productivity and affecting especially our work environment. But good question. Right. So we're gonna keep going. Again, I do recommend that you guys always make a list. A list is really important and helpful, not just in like making these type of decisions, but just in making decisions in general, especially when we're stuck. Sometimes we're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. We're very decisive. And then there's other times where we know we need to take a little bit more of a detached approach to the situation and kind of look and see what's happening and what's going on. Okay. So the initial question was whether or not you would share in an ethical behavior that was happening with a coworker, with your supervisor, knowing that both of you are up for a promotion. So that was the initial question, whether or not you would share that unethical behavior with your supervisor or your higher up. Okay, let's move on. Okay. All right. So I want you to remember that workers perform better where there is motivation. However, you may need to create self-motivation strategies to continue to seek fulfillment or satisfaction at work. So a lot of this is really common in like corporate America, right? You have those bonuses. If you perform well, you get a bonus at the end of the year, or maybe you get a bonus quarterly, or it might be an incentive of if your team does well, they will treat you out to lunch, or they'll buy breakfast for your staff. It might even be you get an extra day off or something along those lines. So employers are always trying to seek ways to motivate their staff because they know that if you work in a place where your workers are motivated, they're going to want to do better. So they're going to perform better. And that means your customer service is going to be better. And if you guys are providing good customer service, you will bring in more customers, right? And so that's going to benefit your company or your organization. However, there are times where there is no bonuses, right? For example, teachers, we don't get bonuses. You teach and that's it. So you have to find other strategies to find that self-motivation to be better or perform better at your job. For example, again, I don't get a bonus if, let's say, my students are saying, oh, Instructor Tanya is really good at helping us with X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to get a bonus, but I need to find ways to self-motivate to continue to be better at my job so that I can better serve my students. So what I do is sometimes I've gotten letters, just little handwritten letters that say thank you. And this is when we were in person, right? we don't have this anymore, but I used to get little letters where students would say, thank you, Instructor Tanya or Professor Tanya for X, Y, and Z. And I still keep those letters. I actually have a box. And now that I'm home and working from home, I keep them in this little shelf that I have next to my desk. And they're in a box. And sometimes before I would have them displayed and I knew I could see them in my office and I saw them and they were just simple little thank you letters, right? But that was motivation because I would look at that and sometimes I was having a hard day work and I would just read one of those notes and I'd be like, oh, this is what I do. So sometimes you have to find that self-motivation. It may not be able to come from your team. It may not come from your supervisors or your higher ups, and you're going to have to find that motivation for yourself. So I invite you to think about if your company is not, giving you that incentive or that motivation to be better at your job, what can you do for yourself to help you be better at your job? Okay. If we were working in corporate America, for example, I have a friend that works for a company, a corporate company, and every year for his when the anniversary of when he was hired, for example, he gets a bonus, but he has to go through a period of review. So, and I'm just making this date up. I don't know if that's the actual date, but let's say that his hire date was November 5th. Then every November 5th, he is up for a review. So about 2 months leading up to that review, he is given a list to see whether or not how he ranks himself in terms of productivity, what he thinks he did well, and what he thinks he didn't do well. And they ask him to write a report on his goals. What are his goals for the next following employment year? Then he submits all that paperwork to his supervisor. The supervisor reviews it, and they rank him from 1 to 5. 5 being he did really, really well, one being he did really poorly. So if it's a 4 and above, he gets a really hefty bonus. Again, corporate America, right? So he gets a hefty bonus. If he performs 3 or below, then there is no bonus for him that year. So the motivation in this case for this particular company, the motivation is money, right? Because you're going to get a bonus on your paycheck because you performed well. But not all of us have the luxury of having a monetary motivation. So we have to find a motivation that works for us. So I really invite you to think about what can be your motivation, okay? Now I want to focus on how you can communicate with your customers. And these are the ways in which you communicate with your customers. And remember, communication is not just verbal, right? It's also nonverbal. And so I reminded you, right, at the beginning of the class, I said, I'm talking to you, but if you notice, I use my hands a lot to speak to you. And you will see me moving and waving my hands all the time because that's part of my nonverbal communication. That's how I communicate with people. It's something that sometimes it can be a little distracting, but it's something that I do, right? So we know that there's the verbal communication with our customers, and then there's our nonverbal communication. And the major things that go into communicating with our customers are these right here. Your appearance, because whether we want to admit it or not, people are still biased and judgmental, and they will judge us based on how we look, unfortunately. But there's, we just have to continue to be ourselves, right? And also your interaction, and I'm listing these in terms of importance, okay? So yes, your appearance matters, but there's nothing you can, it's not like you can change. It's not like I can have a whole, look change just to satisfy my customers. I'm not going to do that, right? But the other one is your interaction with customers, how you're interacting with that customer. And then the third most important, I guess, or second most important, would be your knowledge skills. How much do you know about the product you're selling? How much do you know about the service that you're providing? And then the most important of all is your attitude. And this is something that you can control. I reminded you at the beginning, right, of the class. You can't control how people react to you, but you can control how you react to people. And yes, your body language, your voice, your tone, your hand gestures, your facial expression, all these are part of your nonverbal communication, and they are important because they influence the attitude that you may have with your customers. And if we want to look at just, a definition of what attitude means is this. And this is like your literal textbook definition of what attitude means. It means the emotional responses to people, ideas, and objects. They are based on values. They differ between individuals and cultures, and affect people the effective way that people deal with serious situations and issues. So, for example, the way I view things might be different than the way that Kimberly looks at things, right? What might be okay for me may not be okay for Jim, or may not be okay for Samantha or Isaiah, or what's good for me may be really good for Brenda as well. Everybody has, or for Alma, right? Everyone has different values. Okay, and we're going to explore values today because those also dictate how we perform in the workplace. So now that we know that attitude is the emotional response to people, ideas, and objects based on our values, I want you to explore what your values are. And it's probably something that not a lot of people talk about, right? But it's important to determine what your core values are. So your core values are a set of fundamental beliefs, ideals, or practices that inform how you conduct your life, both personally and professionally. Because your personal life and your professional life are intertwined, right? They're kind of one with another. So I want you, this is going to be our first activity of the day, and this is going to carry us through our first break. So you have about 8 minutes or so to work on this activity, and you don't have to share it with us. It's not something that you have to share with us, but it's something that I really want you to start thinking about, because this is how it's going to help us shape how we are as workers. So I want you to ask yourself, what's important to you? And this is just a list, right? These are not listed in terms of how you should be ranking them. These are just different values that people have and that they share. And they're just put on here on the screen for you to look at. So I want you to pick 6. And I want you to rank them from most important to least important. But again, these are still 6 that you really do care about and you're very passionate about. And one way to look at it is, what stands out the most to you? Maybe, a core value for you is bravery. So pick 6, and you can have more than 6, but I just want you to look at 6 because we have a long list, right? Maybe success is one of them, right? So go ahead and look at these, look these over, and then maybe you want to write them down, and then you want to start putting them in terms of what's most important to the least important. But again, they're still important to you. You're just going to put the most important at the top, and then you're going to go from there. Okay. So go ahead and start doing that exercise, and I will do it with you as well. Our values change over time, right? Maybe the values that you had 9 months ago are different than they were and than they are today, right? Take, for example, let's say new parents, right? Maybe a year ago for them, for that new parent, it was learning something new, right? Or constantly learning something. But now is financial security, because now they have a child that they need to take care of and look after. So they need to be financially secure. Okay, so go ahead and make that list. And these are just examples. If you think of something else, you can always add that to the list. So think about, what are your core examples? Okay, so we have about a minute before our break starts, but I want you to, right now think about those. We're going to go ahead and take our break, and then we'll come back at 6:05 like we always do, and then we'll discuss these a little bit more, okay? So I will see you in about 15 minutes. So I'm going to start recording again. That way we can continue with our class. And during our break, we talked about, before our break, right, we were talking about our values. And I wanted you guys to kind of list what your values are. And maybe it's, one of your values is not something that is on that list that I showed you, right? Those are just examples of what some values are. It doesn't have to be these in particular, right? But it's good for you to kind of have in mind, like, what are those values that you hold on to, right? Because these are kind of like the guiding force of who we are, and they're also going to dictate how we behave at work, and how our behavior is going to affect the relationships that we have with our coworkers, and that's also going to affect how we behave with our customers, right? So everything's kind of like intertwined with each other. And as I was telling you, I also do these things with you, right? So I was thinking about my personal values and what those are, and I wrote them down. Remember I told you I like Post-its, right? So again, Post-its. But and I'll share with you. Some of you have already shared. I know one of you was like circling on the annotating on the actual screen. All those are really, really good, right? I want you to remember that this class is all about participating. I want you guys to participate and not just let me talk the whole time. And I'll read off some of the ones that you had on the chat because they were good, right? Like somebody said, the first thing was like financial stability, right? And then it was maturity, friends, family, fur babies, and then respect. For someone else, it was their number one was financial security, right? And so everybody's values are going to look differently, and that's okay, right? It's totally fine. Like, for example, I'll share mine. My top one is my relationships in my family. So my relationships with my family, my friends, as a person of faith, my relationship with God. And then my second one is learning. I always want to learn new things, new skills. For example, I'm thinking about taking a coding class, right? I'm really interested in like computer coding. And so I'm thinking about taking a class on computer coding. Financial stability, right? Making sure that I have the resources that I need to be able to meet my financial needs. Dependability is really big for me. And gratitude, being grateful for everything that I have, and calm, being able to live a calm life. So I'll share a little bit about dependability and how that translates into my work environment, right? So I like to be dependable. I like to let my coworkers know that if they need something, they can depend on me. But I also want to know that I can depend on my coworkers, right? For one of my jobs, and I share with you that I have multiple jobs, not just one, right? But for one of my jobs, I make sure that the work schedule is done. So I coordinate everyone's schedule. And the biggest thing for me is making sure that people are dependable. That we have someone that's going to cover their shifts. Unfortunately, a lot of our workers are not dependable, right? They will call in sick multiple times. Sometimes it's not that they're sick, they just want to say they're sick. And so there's, a bunch of things that happen, because then I end up getting upset because I'm like, oh my goodness, we need people to work and people are not willing to work. So that is when I start to realize that one of my core values is interfering, and it's, manifesting in my work. And just like that, any of your core values are going to start to manifest in your work life. And I noticed that because I like to be dependable, and I expect people to be dependable, and I shouldn't expect them, right? Because everybody's different. That then I end up getting upset, because I'm like, why are people not dependable, right? But that's something that is a core value to me. It doesn't mean that it's a core value to everybody else who works with me. So that's an example of how our core values are intertwined into our work, and how that can affect our work, because then I end up being upset. I'm human. I end up being upset during my shift, and I'm like, and then I start to realize that my productivity is low because I'm still thinking, and it's preoccupying my mind that people are not being dependable. And in reality, that's when I need to stop and just say, you know what? That everybody thinks the same way that I do. So again, that's just like a small example of how these things can take effect into your work life, and they can begin to affect your relationships with your internal customers. And it's important for us to keep those, those relationships intact. On that note, we're going to move on to the next one. And, these core values are also important to help you determine your work environment. So think about how those core values that you just listed, think about how those affect the type of culture where you want to work in. What kind of work environment do you want to work in? What the resources are necessary for you to do your best work? And maybe that means that you need to self-advocate, right? Talk to your boss about, for example, and I'll give you a perfect example of this, right? I have a worker who has anxiety, and she cannot work more than, and it's, it's something that happens within our society, right? A lot of people suffer from anxiety, and it's something that is very common. There's nothing wrong with it. So I have a worker who has said to us, to management, I can only work 5-hour shifts. If I work more than 5 hours, my anxiety levels are really high, and then I end up having anxiety attacks. And she works 5 days a week, but we only have her on for 5 hours, because we know that we want to be respectful of her, right? So she was able to self-advocate. One of her core values is her mental health. So she knows she needs to advocate for herself. Now we know as management to avoid having to put her on longer shifts, right? So she wants to work, the kind of culture where she wants to work in is where people respect her condition, right? And thank you, Sergio, for sharing your values, right? You have like financial stability, maturity, compassion, loyalty, respect, and dependability. And I'm sure these values are a driving force behind the type of work that you do and how you behave at work, right? And again, these are going to be also how we look at, what makes a strong and healthy relationship, right? How am I having a good relationship with my boss, with my other coworkers? Think about the qualities that you admire of your role models. So I invite you to think about maybe 3 people that you admire. They can be people in your family, they can be friends, they can be celebrities if you like, or philanthropists, right? So think about like people that you admire, and then think about the qualities that attracts you to them, in terms of like the admiration that you have for them, right? So think about what motivates you, what qualities you wish you could develop for yourself, professionally and personally, right? What are your future goals, and what qualities will it take for you to be able to achieve them? So all this is important in terms of, you know, your work environment, because that's going to shape how you behave at work, right? And how that's going to also translate to your customers and your productivity. Okay. So now I want to kind of shift, now that we've talked about, because I really want you to focus on, it's not just customer service, of how to treat your customers, but a lot of it has to do with you. Sometimes we don't understand ourselves and we don't understand where we're coming from. And then we kind of take it out on our customers, right? So we want to avoid that as much as possible. And that's why I, want to focus a lot on who you are and understanding who you are, because the more we understand who we are, and it's a long process, right? And we change over time. The same person that you are today, you weren't 10 years ago, right? You had different goals, different views. Some of those views you've carried over, some of those you haven't, right? So it's important that you learn more about yourself so that you can better understand yourself, and then better serve your customers. So now we're going to kind of shift gears. As we start to learn about ourselves, we're going to shift a little more into how we communicate with our customers, right? Nobody wants to hear you say, nobody showed me how to do that. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that, or it's not my job, right? You, for example, as a customer, don't want to walk into a restaurant and ask for, like, let's say you go in, you finish your meal, and then you're like, oh, can I get the check? And then you don't want someone to be like, well, no one showed me how to print out the check, so I don't know, ask someone else, right? You don't want to walk into a store and say, hey, I'm going to buy these items. Could you please ring these up? No one wants to hear I can't, right? You're going to just end up walking out of the store, right? If no one can ring up your items, you're just going to be like, you know what, I'm out. You don't want to hear someone say, oh, I don't know. When you ask, for example, you say, oh, I would like to, get a milk tea. And they're like, I don't know how to make one, right? Or the absolute worst, right? You don't want to say that's not my job, right? You never want to hear these things from someone in customer service, because that is going to lose you customers. So now that we've talked about what we don't want to hear, it's important that, you get into the mindset. It really is a mindset when it comes to communicating with customers. You have to think about your customer's interest and keep that in mind. Think to yourself, like, if I were that customer, what type of service would I expect? And then you want to set out to provide that service, right? It's that cheesy golden rule that we hear through many different cultures, right? Of treat others the way you want to be treated. So treat your customers the way that you would like to be treated. And then become that person that, that you would like, that you would like for them to treat you, right? So part of that is also thinking about how you are understanding your responsibilities at work, right? And these are some things, like, if you really don't know where you stand in terms of what your duties are at work, what are your responsibilities, then you need to talk to your supervisor, right? Because if we don't know what we are expected to do, then we're not going to do well, right? So talk to your supervisor about what are your exact duties. If you can get a copy of your job description in writing, that would be better, because then you can visually see exactly what it is that you're superiors are asking of you. What are the expectations? Like, what do they expect you to do, right? Maybe you work at a dental office. Maybe you're a dental hygienist, right? And they expect you to obviously perform like everything that has to do with hygiene, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to do x-rays, right? And then talk to your supervisor about, how do I handle blank situations, right? If you have a question in regards to like a way a service is being provided, then you can ask them, who should I talk to about this? Or who would I see about this? And then asking, where are the materials, policies, and equipment located, right? Let's say you work at a warehouse that ships wooden crates. Well, you would want to know where the materials are, right? So that you're able to produce this product. And then wanting to know who's in charge when your superior is not available. Sometimes, we're working in an environment where, let's say we're working in an office setting, right? And if your boss is not available, who is the other person that can be there in the office to make decisions? And you want to ask, like, what is my level of authority, right? And you can kind of rephrase this, right? You can say it in the way, let's say, we go back to that office example, right? Where we're in the office and then we say, you can start off with saying, what if someone needed to leave work early and you were not available to grant that time for them to leave early? Who would they talk to? What would I be able to do in that situation? They might say, nothing, there's nothing you can do. And then that kind of gives you an idea of, okay, well, my level of authority is not there for me to grant time off for people. Or, they might say, you know what, if they need to leave, oh, you can let them go. But it all really depends on being able to communicate with your superiors is really important as well when it comes to customer service. Okay. And now as a customer service representative, right? Or provider, if you will, you need to determine an appropriate approach to talking to your customers, right? So think about, who is your customer? That could be the person that walks in through the door for that service or for that product. Maybe it's the people that you talk to on the phone, or the people that you email all the time. So, who is your customer? What are you doing, or what can you do to help your organization achieve excellence? Like, what are you doing as a worker, and what can you do better? Do you really focus your attention on customer service satisfaction, or are you just there just for that paycheck, right? Are you empowered to make decisions necessary to serve my customer? If not, what is my level of authority? And how can I discuss this with my supervisor, right? Maybe you work at a restaurant, right? And let's say that a customer is saying, you know what, this plate of fries that you brought me are not good. I don't like them. Please send them back, right? What is your level of authority? Are you able to say, you know what, I'm sorry that this happened. Let me take these off the bill for you, right? But maybe you don't have that level of authority to say that. Maybe you need to go and check in with your supervisor and say, customer at table 6 did not like the fries. They sent them back. They don't want them. Would it be okay to write these off the bill, right? And then your supervisor would then approve that. And then you can go back to your customer and say, I'm sorry that you did not enjoy the fries. I have taken them off the bill for you, right? And then think about whether there's policies or procedures that may prevent you from serving your customer. And then maybe you can talk about these to your supervisor. And honestly, this would kind of help out a little bit on your case, because let's say, remember we talked about like becoming indispensable to the company, right? You become indispensable so that if there's ever any layoffs or they need to let go of people, you would be the last person they'll think about, right? If you know that there's some loophole in the policies in how you serve customers, then if you bring it up to your superiors, sometimes we just don't know, right? There are times where we don't know that this is happening. And when you bring it up, they can be like, oh my goodness, thank you. I did not realize that. I did not realize that this was happening, and we're going to go ahead and fix it so that we can better serve our customers. And then I'll give you an example of this, right? So I teach somewhere else, and we had a digital literacy class that was being launched, and we had to look at the curriculum. And one of them was very simple. It was one of the lessons was about on emails and how to send emails, how to compose the email, how to attach files and things like that. And as I was going through the lessons, I realized that there was no option to reply. So we were teaching the students how to create an email and how to send it out, but we weren't teaching them how to reply to that email. And it was something super basic, super, things that sometimes as people that are creating the curriculum, they don't realize it. So I did let my curriculum coordinator know, hey, this is missing on X, Y, and Z slide. And she corrected it, right? Because in that case, like our students were not going to learn. They can learn how to create an email, but if they can't reply to an email, then our job is kind of halfway done, right? At my other job, for example, I realized that in something that the previous person had not realized, by California law, if you work more than 6 hours, you need to take a lunch break, right? No exceptions, no if, ands, or buts. So when I came in and took the position, I realized that people were working 6.5 hours and they were just leaving. They were not taking that lunch break. And so the company could potentially be liable because they weren't providing the proper break, like the proper rest periods. So I approached my supervisor and I said, I'm looking at the schedule and the way that it's done, and I'm realizing that we're not providing the appropriate rest breaks for, in this case, our internal customers, right? So think about how the policies that you might have in place at your work site are inhibiting your ability to be able to serve customers. Okay? And then think about when was the last time you actually told customers that you sincerely appreciated their business. That sometimes goes a long way, right? Being able to say thank you for your business, or thank you for coming in, thank you for purchasing my product. That really goes a long way as well. Okay. And then think about like, what are the different skills or maybe product knowledge or service that I need to learn? What do I need to learn to be able to provide a very better service to my customers? So it's always good to learn, and so especially if you're selling a product, or if you work in a company where products are being sold or services are being offered, because that helps you to better serve your customers. For example, right, when you go to a restaurant and you're kind of in between plates, you don't know if you want this or if you want that, and then you ask your server and you say, what is your personal favorite? Or have you tried this on the menu? Do you think it's better than this? And the worst thing that they can say is, I don't know. I've never tried the food here, right? You know, again, you go back to that's the worst thing you can tell a customer, I don't know. Um, in that case, you should know your product, right? You should know what you're serving. So you can say, well, let's say they're in between two different flavors or something. You can always say, well, this one has more of this and this one has a little more of that. Maybe if you want like a sweeter, tangier sauce, maybe go with this one. But if you want a lemony sauce, maybe you want to go with this one. So you should always really know about the products you're selling, or the services that you're providing. And remember, you guys can always stop me if you need anything, okay? Or if you have any questions. So these are the things that your customers want. It's seven things to remember, right? One is personal recognition. Remember, we talked about this last week where we were saying personalizing that experience for a customer is what's going to bring that customer back to you all the time. Then that comes with like remembering their name, remembering their order, right? Or just trying to personalize that interaction that you have with them. Treating them with courtesy, right? Saying please, thank you. When someone walks into a store, when someone walks into your office, greeting them, not letting them just kind of wander aimlessly, and not letting them know that you acknowledge that they are there. So just saying, welcome. We want to avoid, right? Because there's times where you feel like you're being followed. And this does happen, right? It does happen where you go into a store and then they start following you and following you and following you. You want to avoid following the customer, but you also want to let them know the moment that they walk in that you are there to help them. If they have any questions, to please let you know. How many times have we not walked into a store and they're like, would you like a shopping bag? Or, good morning, good afternoon. Even if they don't answer you, because this happens a lot, right? You can say, hi, good afternoon, good morning, whatever, and people might just ignore you. And that's okay. Remember, you can't control how people react. You can only control how you react. And then providing service in a timely manner. So that means that people are not going to be sitting there waiting 3 hours for you to serve them food, right? Or if they order a product, they're not going to wait 7 months for you to deliver it. In the case, for example, that Erica shared last week was when she ordered the shoes, right? And they were in stock and then they were not in stock. And then they went back and forth with her, but they communicated with her. So even though the service wasn't timely, they provided her with an incentive to want to keep waiting. They said, hey, we're going to give you a discount because what we thought was in stock is taking a little longer. So here is 10% off, 20% off, whatever it is, to kind of keep your customer happy. I had a friend that was waiting 7 months for a fridge. It wasn't a fancy fridge. It was just a regular fridge. It was just something that my friend specifically wanted, that fridge, for some odd reason. They waited 7 months for that fridge. And in the end, he ended up just canceling the order and saying, you know what, because that company that he bought it from wasn't giving him any incentive to keep waiting. There was no, we're sorry, here is anything. Like most companies will throw in something to kind of let the customer know that their purchase is appreciated and their patience in the timely delivery of the service is appreciated as well. Also professionalism, right? When you are with a customer, you don't want to ask a lot of personal questions unless you are a mental health counselor. You shouldn't be asking a lot of personal questions, right? Um, the worst is when we go um, to the grocery stores, right? And I understand sometimes cashiers want to make conversation, but it's the worst thing when you walk into um, a grocery store, you are checking out, and um, your cashier is like, "Oh wow, that's a lot of Oreos. You're gonna eat all those Oreos?" That's not professional, right? Not at all. You just want to just greet them. If you want to say thank you, please be professional, right? And then they want enthusiastic service. And this one is hard because again, we go back to our values, right? Sometimes the way that the work day is going or a personal day is going to affect how we deliver this enthusiastic service. People want to know that you're smiling, that you're cheery, you're upbeat, but there are times where you're not going to feel this way. But as long as you're respectful and you're polite, that's going to kind of mask a little bit of that enthusiastic. There are times where things happen to us, right? At home, with our families, with our friends, and they're affecting how we feel. But we want to be able to do our best to make sure that we are still being polite to our customers. And then empathy. They want to know that you understand them, that you care about them, and you're looking out for their best interest. And then most of all, they want you to be patient. There are a lot of times where people don't know what they want. They're trying to figure out, maybe I want this flavor of ice cream, but maybe I want that one, right? And there's nothing worse than having someone say to you, hurry up, or make a decision now. If you have someone that's going to tell you that, you're not going to want to come back. So customers want these 7 things, and these are good to remember, right? Again, personal recognition, being courteous or polite, having a service in a timely manner, being professional, being enthusiastic. They want empathy, and they want patience. Those are all good qualities for you to develop in the workplace when you are serving customers. And now I'm going to show you a video of what you should not do. And this one's kind of
So
a little
let's say
cheesy the way that they did it, but it's pretty good. It embodies everything you don't want in customer service.
have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big meeting starts in.
Sir, could we ask you a few questions about Ace?
Ace Hardware? I doubt I'll go back. That was just a nightmare.
Mind telling us what happened?
I'm the customer, for crying out loud. They treated me like I was an intruder. I was just running an errand for my wife, gardening gloves, and bird feed. It shouldn't have been as hard as it was. I didn't know where that stuff was, so I needed help to find it, at least to be pointed in the right direction.
Do that. I'm not gonna do that. I don't even do it in
Can
my
I
own
borrow
house.
10 bucks for lunch? Mitten stole my money.
Your cat stole your money.
Yeah, if I leave my wallet out on the counter, he runs down to the basement with it.
Excuse me, could one of you...
I got back late from that concert last night, and I was
Yeah.
like super hammered, so I was running late. So,
That is awesome.
yeah, so can I borrow the money
Excuse me,
or what?
could one of you tell me where I could find birdseed and gardening gloves?
No, I'm sorry. I don't know. I gotta learn what we
No.
sell here at some point, you know?
Okay.
But I don't really. You want paint? Because paint I can see is right over there.
No, just the gardening gloves and...
Gardening? Yeah.
Someone else who could help me?
Oh, yeah, probably.
Great.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, hey, this was great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take it easy. Hey, wait up, guys.
Okay. Well, should I wait here? Okay, well...
Long story short, I eventually found the stuff, no thanks to them. And on my way out, I remembered I wanted to pick up some deck stain.
Honey, no. I did not get into the cake, okay? I know, it's for your mother's birthday. Yeah. No, well, you know who did it. Yeah, I don't care if he's only 1 year old. He climbs those cabinets like a monkey. Nothing, an apple. Yeah. Oh, honey, I gotta go. They don't want us talking on the phone at work. Okay. Yeah, I'm hanging up now. Bye.
Is this the only waterproof stain you have? I have a deck I need to stain and seal before the fall.
Deck stain.
Yeah.
You need deck stain. Cool. Let me just respond to this real quick, and then we'll take care of your stain thing, okay?
They didn't want to take care of me, so I figured I'd go somewhere else. So now, I just want to buy my wife's stuff and get out of there. But no.
Yeah, well, I get off at 6. Yeah, but I still have to go home and get showered and, you know, get cleaned up and stuff. You and Ace Roars, remember?
Yeah, but I don't have my card with me. Can I give you my phone number and have you
Yeah,
look it up?
we can do that. No, not you. Just pick me up at 7. Okay. What's the number?
555-1212.
Ace Hardware, hold please. Come on.
555-1212.
You know, never again.
All right, so we saw, right? Like in this video, we saw how bad that customer service was. So what I want you to do now is I'm going to send you off into breakout rooms like always. And I want you to talk about that video, right? Talk about how what attitude the customer service representatives have. And you can determine whether they were polite or whether they were not polite. And I want you to talk about what you would have done differently if you had been the one that was servicing this customer. Okay, so I'm going to send you off into groups. I'm going to do, let me see, how many of you are there? Wait, so we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. And go ahead and join. Take about 5 minutes to discuss this particular scenario. And I remind you again, right? Talk about the attitude that the customer service representatives had, and then what they did that was wrong, and what you would do differently if you were the one that was working there. Okay, and off you go. All right, so who wants to share with me what they, and remember, you can utilize the chat as well, okay? And I'll read out your answers if you can't turn on your mic. But let me know what you thought was the attitude that that particular employee had. And remember, if you don't share, I will call on you. So go ahead and let me know what you guys thought about the video that we watched. It was unprofessional. Absolutely. Rude. Good. Yes. And you could see it, right? Like, for example, when the customer walked in, no one greeted him. Everybody was talking amongst each other. They completely ignored the fact that he was there. It was very disrespectful. I agree with you, Isaiah. It was disrespectful. We can see when the customer is talking, right? They just ignore him when he's asking for help. They just didn't even like Samantha just said, they failed to acknowledge his presence, right? They disregarded him, like Alma was saying, Exactly. Everybody just acted like the customer didn't exist. But I also want you to focus on the interactions that they had between them. Yes, they talked to him like he was a friend instead of being an actual customer, right? And even the way that they talk to each other. Remember that our customers are not just the people that we're servicing, but it's also the people that work with us. So if you remember at the beginning of that video, the guy comes and, one of the guys comes in, one of the workers, and he's saying, it's silly, right? He said, oh, my cat stole my money. And the way that his co-workers replied, they kind of made fun of him, right? They just kind of dismissed what he was saying as well. So remember, communication is key, right? And we saw it in the way that they communicated with their body language towards their coworker. They just kind of, they even did like hand gestures, like but also the way that they communicated with the customer through their body language. There was no eye contact. They didn't even look at him directly. In one occasion, there's the customer service representative, right, who is on the phone, and she rolls his eyes at him. And yes, Anma was saying, right, that when he walked back to get the deck stain, that worker ignored him. And he even looked at him like he was annoyed, like, why are you even here? So those are all the things we don't want to do, right, with when it comes to our customers, right? And we go back to those 7 things that our customers want from us, right? And that is to be recognized, right? So the first thing that they failed to do was recognize that he was there. The second thing that they failed to do was they failed to be courteous with him. No one helped him, right? No one helped him. So there was no timely service because he wasn't helped. There was no professionalism towards the client. And there was no professionalism within themselves as workers. None of them were enthusiastic to work there. None of them were empathetic towards their customer. The customer said, I need help with finding deck stain, the stain from my deck, and no one helped him. They just walked away from him. No one was patient with him, right? So we could see that the communication in this case was just terrible. Like there's nobody that was willing to service this client. And that's why in the end, he says, I'm not coming back there. I don't ever want to go back to that place. So now that we've looked at that particular video, I want to show you another one that is going to focus on good customer service. And you'll see the difference, right, between one and the other in the way in which they are working with each other. So this other video actually does show us exactly how we want to work with our customers. And this is like, it's a British video, but it's going to help you kind of get an idea of what is good communication in the workplace, right?
Customer service is the most important thing we do here at Talent Limited. It is the biggest thing that will drive our purpose, which is service, quality and value. The service one is absolutely key to making us win against the other competitors. So we really want you to be able to embrace the best way to perform customer service. To do that, we've tried to make 2 different simple analogies for you to be able to remember to put into play when you're at work. SAT-NAV. SAT stands for smile, ask, thank. Every customer deserves all 3 of these. Hello there. Smile. Every customer deserves a smile at the beginning of every interaction, inside or outside the store.
Find the vinegar, please.
Certainly, of course, yes. If you'd like to follow me. Now it's just to the right here. There we are.
Thank you.
Is that all right for you?
Ask. Every customer should be asked one question to begin a conversation and really begin engaging with them.
That's fine, thank you very much.
Okay, is there anything else I can help you with?
No, that's all for today, thank you.
Thank. No matter what situation, we must always leave with a positive comment, always a thank you, and something like have a great evening.
All right, well, you have a nice day.
Thank you,
Take
and you.
care.
This is equally as important for all of our team. Always remember sat-nav when talking to your team. The more you smile, ask, and thank each other, the better our relationships will be, and the better we can make our place to work. So, smile, ask, thank. 3 easy steps for every customer and everyone else in the team.
In one of the training sessions, they actually taught us sat-nav, so you've got smile, ask, thank, and particularly if it's on the shop floor, you've got the nav bit because you're taking them for a journey, sort of showing where the product is, asking them if they want to see anything else and thanking them for their time in the store.
When a customer comes into Budgeons, they feel welcomed, they feel like, you know, this is a friendly environment, a friendly atmosphere, and it makes them feel like, you know, this is somewhere quite homey and local.
Good afternoon.
Hi there.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. You all right?
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Did you find everything you were looking for today?
Yeah, it's my second time being in today, mine. So
Really?
there we
I
go.
do that all the time. Would you like a bag?
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right, so just these 3, that comes to £5 and 3 pence then,
Lovely.
please.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. See you
Have a
again.
nice day. Bye-bye.
You look at other brands and they don't they don't interact as much with their customers. We like to give customers more.
You try and give them the shopping experience that they're after, you know, and the shopping experience that you would like to have yourself, which is a big part of it. You know, you treat people how you want to be treated, and that's what we're encouraged to do.
Whenever I work, we get the same people come in, and they're always coming up to me saying how much, you know, how good their day's been, you know, and talking to me about my day. The customer service that we give makes them feel a lot more like they can be friends with us rather than we're just some kind of robotic operators.
Hi, excuse me.
Sorry, I'm busy at the minute, love.
Sorry, I was wondering if you could help me find the vinegar.
It's over there somewhere, I think.
£5, Brian. Would you change, love?
Thank you. A bit short here?
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Upselling is about letting our customers know about some of the great things we have to offer. We are not about pushing people to buy things. Some retailers have gained a really bad name for trying to push things on people. We only want to make people aware of the great things we may have to offer to help them.
Oh, these are actually on offer at the minute. They're 2 for £3. Do you want me to pick one up? Or?
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. All right. Actually, this one's just right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant. All right, I'll put them through together.
Oh, it's going to be a fight over who's the snowman and the Santa, right? Okay, there we go.
Your manager will help you with any possible opportunities to try this out. So that's how well things work when everything's going great, but sometimes things don't quite always go so well. We're in retail, it's real life, things go wrong. So when they do, we need to have an approach for how to deal with things when they go wrong. That's where we want our customers to last. LAST stands for listen, apologise, solve, thank.
Excuse me?
Hello there.
What happened with this chicken?
Oh, really?
If something has gone wrong, someone will want to tell you about it, and sometimes let off steam. The only way to deal with this is to keep listening until they've calmed down and got their point across. Interrupting will only ever make things worse. Even in the most irate people, they'll calm down if you simply listen and try to understand for long enough.
No problem.
It smells.
Oh,
I'm not prepared to feed my family this.
okay.
Then we need to apologise. Not that we have done anything wrong, but that this has happened, and that we really want to help put it right.
Right, okay. Well, I'm terribly sorry about that, madam. If you'd like to follow me, I'll get a supervisor to sort it out as soon as possible for you. Terribly sorry about this. It's
Then you need to look to solve the problem. In a lot of cases, this could be calling for your team leader or duty manager. This is your way of solving the problem.
Thank you very much.
I'm terribly sorry about everything, madam.
No problem. Thank
Oh,
you very
well,
much for sorting it.
That's not a problem. Thank you very much. Take care.
Before they leave or go to talk to a manager, we must thank them. Just as everyone still deserves a thank you, especially if something has gone wrong.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Because actually sometimes you really see yourself changing a customer's mood. It can be a little bit of a game. You see someone come in, they look quite moody, and you actually want to turn them around, so when they're walking away, you do actually get a little bit of a smile from them. It's actually quite rewarding.
Yeah, I've used it a few times, obviously thanking them and apologising for the problem. I always see them come back, so it's good.
We really need our customers to last. They're the people who believe in us and help us to build a great place to work. It's only by giving them the best customer service, even when things go wrong, that we'll achieve this. If we do our job at making them last well enough, after our final thank you, they will actually want to thank us back. At Touts Budgeons, we believe customer service and our commitment to our team.
And I go back to, the 7 things that customers want, right? So, for example, we saw in this particular video, the examples, right? They greeted the customer when they came in. They were courteous. They try to provide service in a timely manner. In professionalism, right? They were professional. They said, please, thank you. But if you notice, when they were saying what not to do, we heard the guy, the gentleman that was helping the young lady, he calls her love. And that is sometimes something we don't want to do, especially if we don't know the customer. There are a lot of times where we start saying like love and honey and these little pet names that we use, and it's okay to use with maybe our friends or family, but we want to be careful of how we use them with our customers, right? We don't want them to think that we're using them and making them feel uncomfortable, like Samantha just said, because there are times when someone might feel uncomfortable. And you have to remember that we're servicing people from all different backgrounds, right? So it may be, okay, for example, somewhere in England, right, they use love a lot. But if you're here, it may not translate as well. So you want to be mindful of that, right? All of them were enthusiastic. All of them were empathetic, especially when they realized that something was going wrong with that customer. They apologized, right? They're sorry that this inconvenience happened to them, and they were patient. And this is also important for you to use with your internal customers. Remember, your internal customers is everyone who is your coworker, your superior, people that work in the same company that you work for, people that you interact with on a regular basis, because you guys benefit from one another, right? It's part of like being a machine, right? Every part of a machine works together for the machine to actually function. So not only can you use this with your customers, the people that you are servicing, but you can also use it with your coworkers, the people who you might be having a lot of issues with, people who you might be bumping heads with. And that's why it's important, like as we talked to in the beginning of the class, to think about what are your values, right? What do you value? How are these interfering with your job? How are these manifesting in your jobs, right? Remember, I was just telling you about how it really makes me upset when my workers don't show up, because one of my values, one of my core values is dependability, being dependable. But that's not how everybody else is, right? So I need to learn to understand that not everybody else values dependency like I do. So that is something that I need to work on myself, right? But just being able to greet your coworkers, right? Having a personal recognition of who they are, the same way that you would greet your customers, is something that you can use with your coworkers to help foster a better relationship between the two of you. Being courteous with them when they do something for you, saying thank you. Let's say HR needed to bring you some paperwork, and they've come into your office and they hand you a piece of paper. Saying thank you goes a long way, right? Also, if you need to meet a deadline, right? And that deadline depends on, like, the people are depending on that deadline, making sure that you deliver your part of the bargain in a timely manner. Being professional. And this also, goes into making sure we don't use nicknames at work, right? Unless you have a really good relationship with that person, you've established that type of relationship where you can use those terms of endearment, like we say, like saying honey or love or whatever it may be, right? We shouldn't try to use this too much at work. We shouldn't use it at all if we don't have that connection with that person. And sometimes that's part of who you are. I've met coworkers who that's how they express themselves, right? By saying hun and love. But there might be people who might not take that the right way. So we want to be mindful of how we are speaking to our coworkers and trying to have an enthusiastic attitude at work, right? Sometimes it can be a little hard to do this, right? But you want to make sure that you foster a positive environment at work. And it starts with you, right? Being empathetic. And I will share a personal anecdote, right? I needed to take time off to attend a funeral for a great aunt. And I remember approaching my boss and saying, would it be okay for me to take some personal time off? It was just going to be half the day. It wasn't going to be the whole day to attend a family funeral. And his response was, we're all going to die. So no, you don't get to take the day off because next week is going to be someone else. And the next week is going to be, and after that, someone else. So no. And that was the lack of empathy on his end, right? We want to avoid that as much as possible with our coworkers, right? Especially if you're in management, right? You want to be empathetic. And then being patient, right? You want to be patient with your coworkers. You want to be patient with your superiors. So these things are not just 7 things that your customer wants. They're also 7 things that your internal customers want from you. And remember that if you foster a place of work where people are more positive, and remember we saw the TED Talk last week that when you treat people with respect within your work environment, your productivity is better. And if your productivity is better, then your environment is better. And that's going to translate into your customer service. And that's going to eventually reach your customers and make your customers happy. And that's what's going to drive customers to keep coming back to you, right? Because you're providing them with a better customer service experience. And we live in a culture now where it's all about experiences, right? Why do you think now they have those pop-ups for shows, right? It's not like you get to meet the cast, but you get to be a part of that experience, right? Look, for example, when you go to those pop-up museums, right? It's all like hands-on, right? That's an experience because we are focused now, our customer service is focusing more on like the experience that you can provide for people. So you always want to provide a good experience to your customers so that they keep coming back. And it's the same thing with your internal customers, right? You want to have that experience that is a positive experience so that you allow your workers to stay with you longer. You want them to stay working with you. It takes time and it takes money to train new employees, right? But if you can retain the employees you already have and you can help them to grow within the company, you're going to have a good foundation within your company. So again, these things are not just for your external work customers, they're also for your internal workers. Sorry. And now, remember, I always like to close with a soft skill or becoming employable, right? So the first week last week we talked about your resumes, right? How you can make your resume better. But this time, and remember that the template for that resume is on Canvas, okay? But this time we're going to talk about time management, because it's very important for you guys to think about time management in the way that it's set up in the workforce, because that also has a lot to do with the relationships that you foster with the people that you work with. So let me show you a video on that.
And there is now water all over her basement. If you've ever had anything like this, when people find out I write about time management, they assume two things. One is that I'm always on time, and I'm not. I have 4 small children, and I would like to blame them for my occasional tardiness, but sometimes it's just not their fault. I was once late to my own speech on time management. We all had to just take a moment together and savor that irony. The second thing they assume is that I have lots of tips and tricks for saving bits of time here and there. And sometimes I'll hear from magazines that are doing a story along these lines, generally on how to help their readers find an extra hour in the day. And the idea is that we'll shave bits of time off everyday activities, add it up, and we'll have time for the good stuff. And I question the entire premise of this piece, but I'm always interested in hearing what they've come up with before they call me. So some of my favorites: doing errands in a way where you only have to make right-hand turns, being extremely judicious in microwave usage, so it says 3 to 3.5 minutes on the package. We are totally getting in on the bottom side of that. And my personal favorite, which makes sense on some level, is to DVR your favorite shows so you can fast forward through the commercials. And that way you save about 8 minutes every half hour. So in the course of 2 hours of watching TV, you find 32 minutes to exercise. Which is true. You know another way to find 32 minutes to exercise? Don't watch 2 hours of TV a day, right? Anyway, the idea is we'll save bits of time here and there, add it up, we will finally get to everything we want to do. But after studying how successful people spend their time and looking at their schedules hour by hour, I think this idea has it completely backward. We don't build the lives we want by saving time. We build the lives we want, and then time saves itself. Here's what I mean. I recently did a time diary project looking at 1,001 days in the lives of extremely busy women. They had demanding jobs, sometimes their own businesses, kids to care for, maybe parents to care for, community commitments. Busy, busy people. I had them keep track of their time for a week so I could add up how much they worked and slept, and I interviewed them about their strategies for my book. One of the women whose time log I studied, she goes out for a Wednesday night for something. She comes home to find that her water heater has broken, and there is now water all over her basement. If you've ever had anything like this happen to you, you know it is a hugely damaging, frightening, sopping mess. So she's dealing with the immediate aftermath that night. Next day, she's got plumbers coming in. Day after that, professional cleaning crew dealing with the ruined carpet. All this is being recorded on her time log. Winds up taking 7 hours of her week. 7 hours. That's like finding an extra hour in the day. But I'm sure if you had asked her at the start of the week, could you find 7 hours to train for a triathlon? Could you find 7 hours to mentor 7 worthy people? I'm sure she would have said what most of us would have said, which is no. Can't you see how busy I am? Yet when she had to find 7 hours because there is water all over her basement, she found 7 hours. And what this shows us is that time is highly elastic. We cannot make more time, but time will stretch to accommodate what we choose to put into it. And so the key to time management is treating our priorities as the equivalent of that broken water heater. And to get at this, I like to use some language from one of the busiest people I ever interviewed. By busy, I mean she was running a small business with 12 people on the payroll. She had 6 children in her spare time. I was getting in touch with her to set up an interview on how she had it all, that phrase. I remember it was a Thursday morning, and she was not available to speak with me, of course, right? But the reason she was unavailable to speak with me is that she was out for a hike, because it was a beautiful spring morning, and she wanted to go for a hike. So, of course, this makes me even more intrigued, and when I finally do catch up with her, she explains it like this. She says, "Listen, Laura, everything I do, every minute I spend is my choice. And rather than say, I don't have time to do X, Y, or Z, she'd say, I don't do X, Y, or Z because it's not a priority. I don't have time often means it's not a priority." If you think about it, that's really more accurate language. I mean, I could tell you I don't have time to dust my blinds, but that's not true. If you offered to pay me $100,000 to go dust my blinds, I would get to it pretty quickly. Since that is not going to happen, I can acknowledge this is not a matter of lacking time. It's that I don't want to do it. Using this language reminds us that time is a choice. And granted, there may be horrible consequences for making different choices. I will give you that. But we are smart people, and certainly over the long run, we have the power to fill our lives with the things that deserve to be there. So how do we do that? How do we treat our priorities as the equivalent of that broken water heater? Well, first we need to figure out what they are. And I want to give you 2 strategies for thinking about this. The first, on the professional side. I'm sure many people coming up to the end of the year are giving or getting annual performance reviews. You look back over your successes over the year, your opportunities for growth. And this serves its purpose, but I find it's more effective to do this looking forward. So I want you to pretend it's the end of next year. You're giving yourself a performance review, and it has been an absolutely amazing year for you professionally. What 3 to 5 things did you do that made it so amazing? So you can write next year's performance review now. And you can do this for your personal life, too. I'm sure many of you, like me, come December, get cards that contain these folded up sheets of colored paper, on which is written what is known as the family holiday letter. Bit of a wretched genre of literature, really, going on about how amazing everyone in the household is, or even more scintillating, how busy everyone in the household is. But these letters serve a purpose, which is that they tell your friends and family what you did in your personal life that mattered to you over the course of the year. So this year's kind of done, but I want you to pretend it's the end of next year. And it has been an absolutely amazing year for you and the people you care about. What 3 to 5 things did you do that made it so amazing? So you can write next year's family holiday letter now. Don't send it. Please, don't send it. But you can write it. And now between the performance review and the family holiday letter, we have a list of 6 to 10 goals we can work on in the next year. And now we need to break these down into doable steps. So maybe you want to write a family history. Well, first you can read some other family histories, get a sense for the style. And then maybe think about the questions you want to ask your relatives, set up appointments to interview them. Or maybe you want to run a 5K. So you need to find a race and sign up, and figure out a training plan, and dig those shoes out of the back of the closet. And then, this is key, we treat our priorities as the equivalent of that broken water heater by putting them into our schedules first. And we do this by thinking through our weeks before we are in them. I find a really good time to do this is Friday afternoons. Friday afternoon is what an economist might call a low opportunity cost time. Most of us are not sitting there on Friday afternoon saying, I am excited to make progress toward my personal and professional priorities right now. But we are willing to think about what those should be. So take a little bit of time Friday afternoon, make yourself a 3-category priority list: career, relationships, self. Making a 3-category list reminds us that there should be something in all 3 categories. Career we think about, relationships, self, not so much. But anyway, just a short list, 2 to 3 items in each. Then look out over the whole of the next week and see where you can plan them in. Where you plan them in is up to you. And I know this is going to be more complicated for some people than others. I mean, some people's lives are just harder than others. It is not going to be easy to find time to take that poetry class if you are caring for multiple children on your own. I get that. And I don't want to minimize anyone's struggle. But I do think that the numbers I am about to tell you are empowering. There are 168 hours in a week. 24 times 7 is 168 hours. That is a lot of time. If you are working a full-time job, so 40 hours a week, sleeping 8 hours a night, so 56 hours a week, that leaves 72 hours for other things. That is a lot of time. You say you're working 50 hours a week, maybe a main job and a side hustle. Well, that leaves 62 hours for other things. You say you're working 60 hours. Well, that leaves 52 hours for other things. You say you're working more than 60 hours. Well, are you sure? There was once a study comparing people's estimated work weeks with time diaries, found that people claiming 75+ hour work weeks were off by about 25 hours. You can guess in which direction, right? Anyway, in 168 hours a week, I think we can find time for what matters to you. If you want to spend more time with your kids, you want to study more for a test you're taking, you want to exercise for 3 hours and volunteer for 2, you can. And that's even if you're working way more than full-time hours. So we have plenty of time, which is great, because guess what? We don't even need that much time to do amazing things. But when most of us have bits of time, what do? Pull out the phone, right? Start deleting emails, or otherwise we're puttering around the house or watching TV. But small moments can have great power. You can use your bits of time for bits of joy. Maybe it's choosing to read something wonderful on the bus on the way to work. I know when I had a job that required 2 bus rides and a subway ride every morning, I used to go to the library on weekends to get stuff to read. Made the whole experience almost enjoyable. Breaks at work can be used for meditating or praying. If family dinner is out because of your crazy work schedule, maybe family breakfast could be a good substitute. It's about looking at the whole of one's time and seeing where the good stuff can go. I truly believe this. There is time. Even if we are busy, we have time for what matters. And when we focus on what matters, we can build the lives we want in the time we've got. Thank you.
Okay, so we see, right, that she's talking about making sure that we make time for the things that matter. And how does this translate into like our work environment? It has a lot to do with it, right? Sometimes we fail to make a priority list of the things that need to be done at work. And I make it a habit every morning when I walk into work to make a priority list of things that need to get done. There are times where I can't get to certain things that the day before. So you know what? That's going to be the first thing that I do when I walk into work. And we're relating this to work because, that's what this segment of the class is about, right? Becoming employable, soft skills that you need at work. So time management is a big one. But attached to that is also communicating. So if you had a task that you were not able to complete during your time at work, based on that priority list that you did, then you need to talk to your boss. You need to, or your supervisor, or the person in your team who you are working on something together. You need to be able to tell them, X, Y, and Z task was not done today, but I have it on my to-do list for tomorrow. If you know you're not going to meet that deadline, right, it's important for you to communicate with that person. Let them know. This deadline is not going to be able to be met. I'm going to have to, can I have an extension? Or how can we figure out a way in which I can still provide you with some of the stuff that you need, but I get a little more time. So making sure that you are using your time wisely at work A lot of times, phones become a distraction at work, right? Try to limit that as much as we can, because sometimes that kind of lowers down our productivity level. And then remember, right, when we talked about how to be a good coworker last week, we talked about being reliable. So people need to know that they can rely on you, right? They need to know that if you committed to something, that you're going to follow through with that. And if you're not, then you also need to verbalize that. So communication in the workplace is very, very important. It's something that you should always be doing. And remember that you have internal customers, right? And those are your people that you work with on a regular basis. They're people that we kind of forget to foster a relationship with, but they're people that you really should be focusing on having a relationship with, because you have that symbiotic relationship where you guys both benefit from one another. So I really want you to start thinking about how it is that you are using your time at work and how your values are showing up at work in the way that you're working. For example, I have a boss who productivity is something that she really, really values. And so sometimes she expects her workers to stay past their contract time, to not take certain breaks, because she values productivity. That is a value that she has. And she's willing to stay after work to get things done, even if she's not getting paid. But the rest of us as workers, we have to go because it's the end of our contract time. So be mindful of how people's values are showing up at work, and try to see how you can modify your work environment to kind of incorporate those values, right? Again, you can't change them, but you can change the way you react to the way that things are going. And with that, we are going to move into our last segment of the class, which, remember, is always self-care, right? So self-care is very important. Again, those values that we have show up in the way that we perform at work. The way we perform at work translates to how we treat our customers, and the way we treat our customers translates into how well our business is going to be doing, right? But a lot of it also starts with self-care. So it starts with us. So make sure that you're doing something for yourself, even if it's weekly. If you can do something daily, that would be ideal. But if you can't do something daily, then do something weekly. Start little by little, right? The first day, we looked at self-care just in general and what that was. Last time we talked about an example of like meditation as self-care. Something as simple as walking, taking a walk, is a form of self-care. Maybe we want to walk during our break at work. Instead of just sitting at our desk, we can get up and go walk. So the fact that you're using your body and you're kind of paying attention to the things that are around you, the noises that are around you, you're taking that breath of fresh air, you're literally getting that blood flowing in your body, helps you to start to feel better. Okay, so as the days go by and as we have class, I'll talk a little bit more about like different aspects of self-care that you can do. But one of them that is very simple is walking, and that's something that you can do at work. Maybe leaving your building and going around the building, right? But making sure that you're taking care of yourself, because being in customer service is not easy. We have, especially not right now, we're living through a pandemic. We're starting to see the effects of the pandemic had on people. People are very rude, and they take it out on the people that are servicing them, that are helping them. So that can take a toll on you. And if you are being affected by the way that people are treating you, it's going to show in the way in which you are working as well. Okay, especially in those work environments too. You can tell when someone is not having a good day, right? You can see it in the way that they talk, the way that they carry themselves. So we want to avoid burnout as much as possible. Okay, so I remind you, right? Some of self-care is something as simple as like walking. With that, I'm going to move into the last portion of our class, which is our Q&A session. So remember these 10 minutes left of class, I always use them for us to have discussions. If you didn't want to talk about them, something in particular during class, you didn't want others to hear, this is a perfect time for you to connect with me and talk to me about something in particular. But if you don't have any questions, if you don't need anything, then you are good to go, and I will see you on Wednesday. And remember, all the material, now that it's being recorded, is going to go ahead and be uploaded on Canvas by Friday afternoon. Okay? Have a wonderful night. If you don't need anything, you can log off. If not, I will stay here for another 10 minutes and we can chat then.
Thank you. You have a good night.
Same to you. Take care.
Thank you, Tanya. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.